Before we begin, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who appreciates real stories behind famous lives. These small actions help keep deep, meaningful storytelling alive on this platform. Now, let's talk about a marriage that didn't collapse under scandal or betrayal, but slowly unraveled under the quiet weight of time, grief, and personal transformation. Some relationships don't end with shouting or headlines. They end with silence, honesty, and a painful understanding that love alone is no longer enough. Robert Redford, one of Hollywood's most admired and private figures, lived such a story. Long before awards, fame, and legacy defined his name, he built a life with a woman who knew him before the world did. Lola Van Wagenen was not a footnote in his success. She was there when success didn't exist. Their marriage survived poverty, career uncertainty, and the unimaginable pain of losing a child. But there came a moment, decades later, when even their shared history couldn't carry them forward. What caused that turning point wasn't dramatic in a Hollywood sense, yet it changed everything. To understand why Lola walked away from a man the world believed had everything, we must first return to the beginning, when neither of them had anything at all. Before Robert Redford became a symbol of charisma, talent, and artistic integrity, he was a restless young man struggling to find direction. His early life was marked by loss and confusion. After his mother's death and academic struggles that led him to leave college, Redford drifted without a clear sense of purpose. He traveled to Europe, spending time in Paris studying art, hoping distance might bring clarity. Instead, it gave him questions. When he returned to the United States in the late 1950s, he wasn't chasing fame. He was searching for stability, identity, and meaning. That search led him to Lola Van Wagenen, a young woman deeply rooted in intellect, social awareness, and purpose. She wasn't drawn to ambition for ambition's sake. She valued ideas, education, and commitment. Their connection didn't come from glamour or shared dreams of Hollywood. It came from shared vulnerability. They were both young, thoughtful, and shaped by life earlier than expected. Robert was still unknown, untested, and unsure. Lola saw potential, not a star. In a world that would later pull them apart, their early bond was formed in simplicity and honesty. They married quietly in 1958, not knowing how dramatically their lives were about to change. Their early years together were far from romantic in the cinematic sense. Life in New York City was hard, uncertain, and financially unstable. Robert studied art and later acting, moving from one rejection to another, while Lola worked and studied, holding their household together. She wasn't just emotionally supportive. She was practical, disciplined, and steady. When Redford enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, it was Lola's consistency that allowed him to keep going. They lived modestly, sometimes barely making ends meet, but there was a sense of shared effort. They were building something together, brick by brick. Fame wasn't part of the picture yet. Survival was. In 1959, their lives were shaken by unimaginable tragedy when their first child, Scott Anthony, died suddenly at just 2 months old. The loss changed everything. Redford later admitted he carried deep guilt, believing he had failed as a father. Lola never spoke publicly about the pain, but those close to her understood the grief never truly left. Losing a child doesn't simply wound a marriage, it reshapes it. While they stayed together, something delicate was altered forever. Still, they moved forward, believing endurance itself was an act of love. In the years that followed, Robert and Lola welcomed 3 more children, Shauna, James, and Amy. Parenthood became the center of their lives as Redford's career slowly began to gain traction. His early acting roles didn't bring immediate fame, but they brought momentum. Stage performances turned into television work, and eventually film opportunities followed. As Robert's professional world expanded, Lola's role within the family deepened. She became the emotional anchor, managing the household and raising their children while supporting her husband's growing ambitions. For a time, this balance worked. They had already survived grief, financial instability, and uncertainty. Compared to that, long hours and travel seemed manageable. But success has a way of changing the rhythm of a relationship. As Redford's recognition increased, so did the demands on his time. Auditions became contracts. Short trips became months away. What once felt like teamwork slowly began to feel like separation. Lola carried responsibility quietly, rarely complaining, but the weight accumulated. Their marriage wasn't breaking, but it was stretching. And not every bond can stretch indefinitely without consequence. The late 1960s and early 1970s transformed Robert Redford into a global star. Films like Barefoot in the Park, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and The Sting made him a household name. Fame arrived fast and relentlessly. With it came travel, constant attention, and the expectations of an industry that never rests. For Redford, success brought validation. For Lola, it brought distance. While the world celebrated her husband, she navigated the realities of raising children largely on her own. The private life they once protected became increasingly exposed to public curiosity. Paparazzi, interviews, and speculation invaded spaces that had once been sacred. Redford remained reserved, but fame doesn't require participation to exert pressure. It simply exists. Hollywood began to reshape not just his schedule, but his identity. Meanwhile, Lola watched her marriage adjust to a version of life she never asked for. She supported him, but support doesn't erase loneliness. The emotional gap between them didn't arrive suddenly. It grew quietly, reinforced by time apart, unspoken sacrifices, and the realization that fame had altered the foundation of their partnership in ways neither had anticipated. While Robert's public image expanded, Lola refused to disappear into the role of a celebrity spouse. She pursued education, activism, and intellectual independence with determination. In 1970, she co-founded Consumer Action Now, focusing on environmental and consumer rights at a time when such movements were still emerging. She wasn't reacting to her husband's fame. She was following her own convictions. Lola believed deeply in meaningful contribution, not recognition. Yet her growing independence existed alongside a marriage increasingly defined by physical and emotional absence. As Redford became more immersed in his work, Lola became more immersed in hers. They were evolving, but not always together. The challenge wasn't conflict, it was divergence. Two people growing in different directions, each with valid reasons. For a private couple, public attention intensified every imbalance. Hollywood rumors about Redford's on-screen chemistry and personal life added strain, even without confirmation. Trust doesn't collapse instantly. It erodes when reassurance becomes infrequent and silence fills the space where communication once lived. Their marriage remained intact, but the ease they once shared was fading. By the late 1970s, the emotional landscape of their marriage had changed noticeably. Redford's career demanded immersion, and he often retreated into work rather than confronting personal strain. He wasn't avoiding responsibility, he was overwhelmed by it. Lola, who valued stability and presence, felt increasingly isolated within a partnership that no longer felt shared. Love still existed, but daily life no longer reflected it. Their conversations grew heavier, their time together more limited. This wasn't a story of betrayal. It was a story of two people struggling to reconcile who they were with who they had become. Redford later admitted he often didn't know how to face emotional issues directly. Lola, on the other hand, understood emotions deeply and felt them fully. That difference mattered. Over time, unspoken truths became burdens. The marriage wasn't collapsing from one event, but from years of emotional misalignment. By the early 1980s, both sensed that something fundamental had shifted. What neither realized yet was that one moment of honesty would soon make everything undeniable. The turning point in Robert and Lola's marriage wasn't explosive or public. It was deeply personal. Redford later described reaching a realization that he felt lost, disconnected from himself, and unsure how to continue living the life he had built. He wasn't blaming Lola. He wasn't seeking escape through scandal. He was confronting an internal truth he could no longer ignore. He had married young, before understanding the demands of fame or the evolution of his own identity. The man he had become no longer fit within the structure of the marriage they shared. When he finally voiced this truth, it wasn't cruel, but it was devastating. For Lola, the weight of those words carried decades of sacrifice, resilience, and love. She had stood beside him through poverty, grief, and success. Hearing that the marriage no longer aligned with who he was becoming clarified what she already felt. There was no argument that could fix it. No compromise that could bridge it. This wasn't about fault. It was about reality. And sometimes, reality ends even the strongest bonds. After nearly 30 years of marriage, Lola made a decision that was quiet, firm, and deeply painful. She chose to walk away, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in acceptance. She understood that love cannot survive when two people are no longer living the same life. Ending the marriage wasn't a rejection of the past. It was an acknowledgement that the future they once imagined no longer existed. Their separation in 1985 came without drama or headlines. There were no public accusations, no interviews, no attempts to control the narrative. That silence spoke volumes. Both understood the weight of what they were ending. For Lola, leaving meant stepping out of a life defined by compromise and into one shaped by her own values. For Redford, it meant confronting the loss of a partnership that had anchored his entire adult life. Their divorce wasn't about failure. It was about recognizing limits. Sometimes, staying requires more courage than leaving. And sometimes, leaving is the only honest choice left. Life after divorce forced both Robert and Lola to redefine themselves. Redford threw himself into work, but with a new sense of purpose. He directed Ordinary People, winning an Academy Award, and invested deeply in independent filmmaking. The Sundance Institute became his legacy, a space designed to support artists who, like his younger self, needed opportunity rather than approval. His pain found expression through creation. Lola, meanwhile, returned fully to academia. She completed her degrees, ultimately earning a PhD in American history. In 1996, she co-founded Clio Visualizing History, a nonprofit dedicated to accessible education. She didn't seek visibility, she sought impact. Their lives moved forward separately, yet they remained connected through their children and shared history. Divorce didn't erase what they had built, it simply changed its form. Both carried scars, but also growth. Healing wasn't immediate. It unfolded slowly, through work, purpose, and time. Even after divorce, tragedy continued to link Robert and Lola. The loss of their son James in 2020 reopened wounds that never fully healed. Grief has a way of ignoring legal boundaries. In moments of profound loss, past and present merge. Though no longer married, they shared the pain of burying another child. That shared history, forged in grief and resilience, remained unbreakable. Their connection endured not as a romantic bond, but as a testament to what they had survived together. Some relationships don't end cleanly. They evolve into something quieter, more complex, and deeply human. Redford never spoke of Lola with resentment. He acknowledged her importance repeatedly, recognizing that without her, his early life and career would have looked very different. Respect replaced partnership, and understanding replaced expectation. Years later, Robert Redford found love again, this time with artist and environmentalist Sybil Shaggers. Their relationship unfolded slowly, grounded in maturity rather than ambition. They married in 2009 in a private ceremony far from Hollywood's glare. It was a different chapter, built on balance and shared values rather than survival. Redford often credited this relationship with bringing peace into his later years, but even as he moved forward, the past remained part of him. His marriage to Lola had shaped his understanding of love, loss, and responsibility. It wasn't erased by time or new beginnings. It became part of the foundation he carried forward. When Robert Redford passed away in 2025 at the age of 87, the world mourned an icon. Tributes celebrated his films, his activism, and his impact on independent cinema. But beneath the accolades was a quieter truth. His life was shaped as much by heartbreak as by success. His marriage to Lola Van Wagenen was not a footnote. It was a defining chapter, a story of two people who built something real before fame complicated everything. Their relationship didn't fail. It transformed. And transformation, though painful, is often the most honest outcome of all. Lola never returned to public commentary after his death. She continued living with the same privacy and dignity that had defined her entire life. Her legacy exists not in headlines, but in education, activism, and resilience. She was never interested in being remembered as a celebrity spouse. She wanted to be remembered for her work, her values, and her independence. In that, she succeeded. Her story reminds us that strength doesn't always look loud. Sometimes, it looks like walking away when staying would mean losing yourself. In the end, Robert Redford and Lola Van Wagenen's marriage didn't end because of scandal or betrayal. It ended because two people grew into versions of themselves that could no longer walk the same path. Their story reminds us that love can be real, deep, and meaningful, even when it doesn't last forever. Sometimes, the bravest thing two people can do is accept that their journey together has reached its end. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think was the hardest challenge they faced? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more untold stories, and share it with someone who values real, human narratives behind famous lives.